What is up, everybody? Welcome to today's episode of Grant Teach Me Something, where we're going to be taking a very serious turn and looking at something that most of us have or will struggle with, which is depression as an entrepreneur. So stick with us. When we get back, we're going to be getting in there and just talking the reality of what this business looks like and how to deal with these mental blocks that sometimes we run into. So we will see you on the other side of the break. What is up, everybody? What's up, Rai Rai?
Hey, what's up, Grant?
How you doing?
I'm ready for some Grant Teach Me Something.
Yeah. Oh man, we got some extra pizzazz going.
I know.
Well, thanks for joining us today. Like I mentioned in the intro here, depression is a real thing, and that's something that I think a lot of people don't really give enough attention to. They don't respect that mental health is something that we need to pay attention to, and so we wanted to discuss that. Ryan has been a confidant for me over times of my depression, and he had a great idea of just like, man, why don't we just bring this up?
And one thing I did want to take a note of is there's feeling depressed, there's feeling sorry, and then there's also like straight up clinical depression. We may be dabbling in all three of those arenas. I'm sure there's more arenas, but we love our disclaimers. By no means are we professional healthcare people.
Right.
We're just trying to open it up and have an honest conversation about feeling like a failure, even though everybody looks at you and goes like, "Oh my God, that's Grant, teach me."
Right, and that's very real. And to that point, right, there is clinical depression. There is depression just from, I'll call it seasonal depression, and it can be depression caused by your surroundings or whatever. But clinical depression is a real chemical imbalance that needs medication, and don't be ashamed of that. And to that point, if you are finding this video because you're searching, because you're currently feeling depression, today we're going to be talking about the community aspect and some of the ways to kind of work through that. But I want to be very clear, because of this topic of the conversation, that if you are in a position where you feel like it is no longer worth being around, please reach out. The National Suicide Prevention Hotline is 1-800-273-8255. Again, that's 1-800-273-8255. We'll drop that in a comment for you as well. So please just don't make any decisions that are final, right?
Right.
If you are feeling that way. But to kind of take a step back from that a little bit, depression is something that we deal with, and I've dealt with it, where it has been preventative to my life happening. And I think that you've gone through some periods of life as well where you're...
Well, yeah, and I mean, ultimately, as an entrepreneur, especially in 2018, going into 2019, being an entrepreneur is extremely sexy. Like, that's the thing. There's a lot of, like, I have a couple of hashtags out there, like the hashtag hustle grind or the rah work, which is kind of subtly, not so subtly poking fun at it, because it's like, it's absurd. It's like, yes, being an entrepreneur rocks, and it does provide you some freedoms, and it does give you the outlet to be creative and create this empire if you see fit. But that being said, the person that goes to college, becomes a doctor, becomes a lawyer, becomes a 9-to-5er, but has all the time in the world to do whatever they want to do, there's nothing wrong with that. If it makes them happy and they get to spend so much time with their family, rock on. Yeah. But as an entrepreneur, we're always like, I don't want to say we or always, but there's at times a sentiment where, oh, I'm an entrepreneur, I'm better than you. And it's like, okay, well then why is it the guy that works a government job is super happy because they get 30 days off a year or something?
Yeah, I think that's a really important distinction to have, is that, we have to choose happiness ultimately. And I know that that's an oversimplification, or it can feel like an oversimplification, but in reality, it's really not. It's really not an oversimplification. At some point in time, we have to choose if we are going to allow this to affect us in a way that's going to be permanent, or we're going to take steps to try to lead out of it, right? And part of those steps is understanding that happiness is defined differently for different people. And if you've tried this entrepreneurial thing out and it's just not for you, and you've given it your best shot, and you're looking at the greener side of the pasture of the 9-to-5, That's okay, man. Like, we're not going to judge you if you want to go back into 9-to-5 work, and that's where you find your joy.
But here's the problem with that. I learned this a couple years ago, is when you work in an entrepreneurial world and you've been an entrepreneur for the majority of your life, and you in your profession are seen as shit hot, and you're like, man, I want to get a job at like, let's take a huge hypothetical leap. You want to work at the USO, you want to work at the American Heart Association, you want to really just go, you know what, I'm cool making $60,000 to $80,000 the rest of my life because I'm going in a direction where there's an end to this. I got you. Don't worry. Where it's like you make a decision because I want to do good. I want to do the nonprofit. I want to make a change in other people's lives, and I want to just boom. And then throw it back to the entrepreneur world. You throw in your resume, and they look at you going, no. And that's happened to me because, after, my time doing whatever I was doing, then like, hey, I had a partner, things didn't work out. I was basically went to zero, bankrupt. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to work at the USO. I'm going to go to Afghanistan. I'm going to put on events and work on that because I've done events. Obviously, they're going to want me. I'm going to be the best USO guy ever. I couldn't even get a call back. I couldn't even get it's basically because my resume is built for an entrepreneurial lifestyle.
That's very interesting.
I don't know why I went into that, but
No,
maybe because at the time I was like, "What the shit?"
I know. Well, and that's going to lead into more depression about that,
Yeah.
right? And so yeah. I mean, ultimately, it does come down to you didn't just curl up into a fetal position and let it take you forever. It may have for a little while, and that's one of the things that I want to that I really want to point out is that and we'll kind of start this episode off. I say start 10 minutes in. With a golden nugget of, I really want you guys to understand that your mental health is just as important to the success of your company and to your entrepreneurial lifestyle as the marketing you send, as answering the phone calls, as having the staff to get to it, right? Because so many times what we find in this world is, as an entrepreneur, you don't allow yourself to take time to take care of you because of all the other stuff that has to happen, right? And again, there is nothing more important to the success of your company than your mental health and being in a position where you can clearly take care of those things, right? So like I mentioned here, with this situation of even trying to go back into the W-2 world and it not working out, that can hit you in the gut. And it's okay to take some time to grieve on that, right? It's okay to feel like crap for a while. You don't have to beat yourself up and just be like, everything is always going to be happy-go-lucky. Allow yourself that time. But you also have to choose to say, this is not going to define me. I'm going to allow myself this amount of time to do it. This is not what defines me. What defines me is something far greater, and that's what I'm going to work towards.
And that whole conversation, me rambling, led me to I don't know if it's a golden nugget, but maybe a mini nugget, where because before I was in that situation, I was fairly widely known in a certain element of the real estate investor community. And, people are like, yeah, Ryan this, Ryan that, but necessarily they don't really know what I was up to. The golden nugget I'm trying to, what's littler? What's more small than a nugget?
I don't know.
The
golden fleck.
Speck. This is a golden fleck. If there's somebody in your community that you're like, man, this person would be good for my organization, or I have an idea to do something with this person, don't immediately assume that person, oh, well, Ryan, he's got others, he'll never work with me, or so-and-so will never do this because they've got all this other stuff going on. Never assume somebody else is too busy to work with you. So if you want to work with a Ryan, or work with a Grant, or work with a Steve, or work with a Travion, hit him up and be like, hey man, I got this opportunity, I wanted to see if you had time to talk about it. You never know, because in their life they might be like, holy crap, this perfect timing.
Yeah. Because here's the other thing. Let's transition into the platform that we are currently on, which is Facebook, right?
Yeah.
Facebook is such a cause of depression for people, and it's just true. I mean, there are studies after studies. If I was a prepared human being, I would have looked these studies up beforehand to have some real stats for you. But pretty much down the line, people who give up social media are happier. It's just like when they do scientific studies of it, literally, they are.
I don't think you said turn off the show, though.
I'm not. What I'm saying is that just like with everything else, improper expectations of what a platform is going to be your downfall. The downfall to people getting into this business and failing, hands down, is improper expectations. It's expecting to have the luxury cars and the big house.
And the Joneses is always going, well, Grant has this, I should have that. Well,
Right.
You don't know what Grant's been doing. You don't know what he's been doing behind the scenes.
When was the last time you saw somebody Facebook Live a fight with their girlfriend? You know? Like, well, even though there might be an answer to that, the point is, we're not going to see that. Right? What you see on Facebook is a manufactured picture of what that person wants you to see on Facebook. And that's part of why we're stepping out and doing something that frankly is going to take some vulnerability on our part. So far, just honestly, I haven't been vulnerable at all in this episode. But I'll build into that, and we will talk about some of the issues that I have had myself, and let's share.
And then, and I want to keep this nugget rich, though. So for me, when I don't want to use the word vulnerable, but like when I'm super stressed or when I feel sad, when I feel lonely, when I'm like, oh, why won't Sally Sue go out on a date with me or whatever? You know what I do?
Go on a date with me.
And I know that's probably the most unhealthy thing. It's like, hey, go watch a movie, go spend some time with your friends, go do this. But for me, my outlet is stay at the office till 10 or 11 o'clock at night.
And so let's chat about that for a second, because so this is also one of the big reasons why we want to talk about this together, is that Ryan and I have very different perspectives on handling these stresses, handling some of the things that go on with that. And again, to the initial point, neither one of us are wrong. We have to figure out what the thing is that works for us, right? So for me, my personal way that I have to recharge is I've got to get away. Like my deer lease, one of the major reasons I picked it is that I lose phone signal an hour before I actually show up to the lease, and it's a 40 square mile lease. We've got a lot, I've still got 30 minutes to go before I'm actually at my spot. That was what I needed. I needed the ability to go away, be in the trees, and not hear anything from anyone, and completely wash my brain clean.
So before we get too far, I do want to say, because I do want to keep this a conversation with everybody, like drop in the comments, what is your outlet? And again, there's no wrong answer. Well, there's probably wrong answers, but like alcohol or drugs is probably the wrong way to go,
right, yeah.
or the other alternative. But just let's keep this conversation.
Yeah.
What is your outlet for dealing with stress, feeling with loneliness, sadness, etc.? Sorry, I didn't mean to.
No, that's a great. I would love to know what you guys, because similarly here, we're seeing two different outlets. Ryan has to work harder. I have to completely not work. That's where we go, right? What's your middle ground? Because the reason we want to talk about this and have this in the comments too is like your thing for recharging may be something that somebody hadn't really considered doing, and they're like, oh, that's actually a pretty good idea. Maybe your thing is yoga, maybe whatever it is. But again, we've got to be very clear with ourselves and very on the same page that we need to take care of our mental health. Mental health is pretty stigmatized in the U.S., even down to like the prescription side of it, like needing prescriptions if you are clinically depressed can be very difficult to swallow, whatever, because of kind of the stigma that goes behind it. But it should not be stigmatized, and that's again why we're kind of stepping out and talking about this. So I've struggled with depression off and on my whole life. Clinical depression does run through my family, and just straight up, I mean, last year, 2017, I was basically useless for the first 6 months of that year. I really was. I did not do. I almost ran my companies into the ground by just being so useless, and that's something that I've had to reconcile with myself and fix, and that we'll get into some of the what that process has looked like and all that kind of stuff, and how I've been able to stay out of that depression.
But while we're at it, why don't we peel back the layer even further? So 2016 for me was like a really bad year for Ryan, or it might, I don't know, 15, 16, whatever, I can't remember. So I was basically more useless than you were. And I forgot how, but we started working together. But we started working together right in that, if you remember, that December of 16 going into 17. And we're like, we had all these plans, all these aspirations. So I won't be so bold as like, oh, Grant saved my life, but you came into my, well, you were already in my life, but you came in, presented opportunity, like at least kept me alive. Not in a suicidal standpoint, but just like fed.
Yeah,
you know,
right, financially
like
too.
Food.
Yeah.
But, you know, talking about your timeline and then talking about my timeline, it's like, cool, there's this opportunity. Let's have these big aspirations. Let's take you and take a couple other partners and come together and blow it out of the water. And then you feel useless, and then that never takes off.
Right.
There's nothing wrong with that. It's
Right.
just, but 99.9% of entrepreneur type of efforts don't succeed.
Yeah, and that's a good point. You know, you see me talk about all the houses I have bought. You don't see me say that we wasted $70,000 in marketing in the first 2 quarters of 2017 and bought like 3 houses, right? Like and that was on me. That is my fault. That is my flaw, and it was my money, fortunately. But it's, you know, that's something that I have to deal with, and also fed into the depression that I was feeling surrounding everything there too, right?
Yeah, and again, and the reason it failed or whatever just didn't take off. I don't like the word failure. Is mainly because we weren't paying attention to certain systems. We were just playing around. We're doing what we knew for the past 3 to 5 years,
which
and
didn't really work anymore.
We didn't shift. We didn't. What's the key word that Gary Keller uses? Migrate, mimic, not what?
Pivot.
We didn't pivot. We didn't pivot our market efforts. If we would have spent $70,000 on bandit signs in 2016, 2017, different story.
Sure. But regardless, it was something that affected us and something that had to be dealt with, right? And that sucks. So when I say I nearly ran my companies into the ground, part of it is throwing 70 grand out that I did a crap job of. You know, that's a pretty big hit to take, right? So I felt
we had
man.
a good time doing it.
We did, and I think the moral of the story of even that goes down to the biggest. And I actually want to get through some of these answers that you guys have given us to, but one of the bigger, what's the word I'm looking for? Like stringed together, like the common traits between these things, community. If you are watching this show right now, you have a community. You have a community through the Propelio TV guys, through CreativeCashFlow.com, through the people who are commenting on this. Everybody here is part of your community. Everybody here is watching for a reason. We've got, 30 plus viewers right now watching who are sharing the same sentiments, or we wouldn't be watching this, right? So you have community. With him and myself in this venture, it was very helpful to have somebody else there to talk to. One of the parts that I fail at whenever I get in depression is that my default mode is head in the sand. My default mode that I have to, and it's my least favorite thing about myself, honestly, is that when things start piling up and things start sucking, my first reaction, and I hate to even admit it, is put my head in the sand, and you know what? Eventually the problem goes away. And you know the worst part about that?
What's that?
It's true. Eventually, if you hide long enough, the problem goes away. And that is not...
That's your nugget for the day. Just avoid all of it.
And that's not healthy. That is not healthy. Yeah, we need a golden nugget and like a red nugget. Like, do not do this.
Kryptonite, like a green kryptonite.
Yeah, the dynamite nugget.
Yeah.
The plastic explosive. Anyway, whatever. So what I'm getting at though is I hate that about myself. That is not the right way to respond. There is, like we're talking about, there are certain things that we're going to talk about today that doesn't matter. What is your thing? My thing, I got to get away. Ryan's thing, he ends up working. I appreciate you guys chiming in here. There's Chris Chavez says he completely disconnects, so that's similar to me. Joel Lee is regular exercise. That's a great one, man. Taking care of your body and taking care of your mind. Again, I'll go back to the very first nugget that we have. There is nothing more important to the success of your company and you as a person than your mental health, and to that being your physical health, because working out does release endorphins. And guess what? Endorphins, whether you like it or not, help you keep happy.
It's like the Austin Powers thing. It's like, I eat because I'm fat. I'm fat because I eat. And then for me, I mean, obviously I'm a big dude. My history is I've always been athletic, like I'm large athletic. You could look at my Facebook timeline and be like,
rugby
dude,
guy,
you're
though.
a big dude.
Yeah, rugby.
Rugby, I was in the Marines. Like, I was able to run a half marathon out of my ass, like, did not train for it. Did a half marathon in like 2.5 hours, and I was like almost 280 pounds when I did it. But my fitness, like, basically died when I blew out my ankle playing rugby. But at the same time, I was dealing with a lot of stressful stuff with work. So then it's like the mental component comes in. It's just like, well, are you lazy? Well, on that component, yeah. But when it comes to work stuff, hell no, I'm not lazy. I work my ass off.
Sure.
But when I'm happier, yeah, I'll work out. But it's like when you're stressed, you just work for me. So yeah, I think that's a good component is keeping healthy and working out, doing the fitness. And I know it sounds very hypocritical for me to talk about fitness when I work out like once a month right now. Yeah. But at least I'm trying.
Yeah, and doing it. Yeah, that is important. Jessica says spending time with my cute grandbaby. I call her my therapy baby. I love that. That's hilarious. But yeah, family, that's huge. There's all kinds of answers here. Jeremiah is an outlet guy. Matt likes going on road trips, playing guitar, podcasts, that kind of stuff. So, and then Carrie Benson, going to church and shopping. Yeah. There's all kinds of different things that we can do. And I appreciate this. Mario walks the dog. So there's all kinds of different ways to get out of it. But again, community, I think, is going to be one of the large things. Whatever that is that makes you happy, whatever your happy space is, you are never too, well, unless your happy space is freaking, skiing down a mountain, but you're never too broke to take time for yourself, right? You're never too broke to take time for yourself. One of the things that leads a lot of the entrepreneurs in, and where I have experienced depression on my end, as well as seen depression happen on other people, is, so Ryan, you're a very rare case in a lot of ways. You're very successful as the integrator. For those of you who know Traction, Ryan is one of the best integrators you're going to find out there, which, if you've read Traction, is incredibly hard to find. There is only 5% of the 20% people that are entrepreneurs. Only 5% of those people would fit into the integrator role, and Ryan does an excellent job at that. So understanding that Ryan is a little bit of a different cat, that working harder is not always going to be the solution for you. If it is, it is. Because I'm leading that in to say, a lot of the entrepreneurs that I know who have suffered from depression, myself included, is because we keep pushing ourselves harder and further into the work, we get further and further away from the things that we really need to focus on to keep our mental health healthy.
Yeah, I mean, I'll jump into that. For me, like right now, and again, it goes back to that I'm fat because I eat, I eat because I'm fat. Not necessarily on that, but like I feel lonely at times. Like I don't hang out with enough friends. I don't have a romantic life at all. And that's mainly because I work too much. But when I have those feelings of loneliness and I feel those feelings of, man, I wish I could hang out with so-and-so, what have I already said I do? I work.
Yeah.
So it's that vicious cycle of, man, I wish I could go on a date tonight. Well, there's no date. Well, I'll work.
Yeah.
Well, if I just was like on Bumble or Tinder or met people or hung out with people or go to dinner or with friends, there'd probably be a lot more opportunities for that type of lifestyle.
True, yeah.
But as I stated, my outlet is to work. And
so let's take a moment and look at that, right? Because if the outlet is work, that is a common string of a lot of entrepreneurs, and that can be okay, right? Nothing is the wrong answer in this situation. But you have to understand the choice that you're making when you make these choices, right? As a no segue at all, some of the greatest leaders, some of the greatest businessmen that so many of us model after, we don't fully appreciate. Like Albert Einstein was a piece of crap to his family. So was Steve Jobs, right? He was a piece of crap socially to the people around him. Now we model and we look at the successes that these guys have had and we say, that's what we want to do. We read books studying how they've done it. We try to mimic their movements. But very early on, you have to make a decision what your priority is in doing this.
And I'm glad you brought up Albert Einstein. And I'm not a history guy, and I don't know the full history of Albert Einstein. But I would like to point out that Google him right now, the only pictures you're really going to see is the old dude. You don't really see pictures of a young Albert Einstein. And part of that is because cameras weren't as readily available as they are now. But also part of that is due to the fact that when he was younger, he wasn't successful and famous.
Yeah,
you know?
Yeah.
So you have to take account the grind that it took to get to the point that he was successful.
Cheat, lost his marriage, terrible father.
Yeah,
Same
I'm
thing
not
with
even going to
jobs.
that. It's just,
Right.
but just I'm trying to not really comment on how horribly it was, but just maybe transition to the fact that we're always, it's always about the Joneses.
Right.
And, and as an entrepreneur, if you're a true entrepreneur, there really is no end to the race. You're like, man, I'm broke right now. If I could just make $100 a day passive, and then you get that $100, and then you see someone right there who makes $500, you're like, well, shit, man, I'm a deadbeat. I only make 100. That guy makes 500, and you don't realize, you don't take into account where you started.
Oh yeah.
So there's a nugget for you.
It is.
As an entrepreneur, before you start comparing yourself to every other person, take into account where you started. Donald Trump, everybody, he's like, I'm a businessman. I'm not going to get political, don't worry. Not to get political. But Donald Trump, it's like, man, he's a way successful businessman. He got $1 million loan from his parents. That's the big one. But what people don't realize is I think he also had like $100 million trust fund. So it's like, he had a good place to start.
Right, had some good starting points. And to that point, the only thing that we can ever compare is ourselves to ourselves. That's the only thing that we can truly do, right? We're going to take a break here for a second, but then when we come back, let's kind of talk. We're going to talk. So we've talked about some of the foundations of this.
I don't know what we're talking about. We're just having a conversation.
Right, and it's a candid, vulnerable, let's talk about what's going on. But we've talked about some of the foundations of depression, letting you guys understand, hey, this is the real deal. This happens. We're all in it together. When we get back from the break, I'd like to talk a little bit about what can we do about that? What can we recognize? What can we do to move forward? So stick with us here, and we'll be right back. All right, guys, thanks for joining us back. So, we're going to jump into a little bit of kind of recognizing these moments of depression, recognizing how we can get out of it together. But I did want to just hit a couple of the topics that have been put on here. Cameron, thank you so much for chiming in. He says it's a great topic. The candor of the message is exactly why I tune in. I've had a rough 30 days myself, but after some time disconnected, it's time to get back at it. And I love that, because what you see in this comment, the vulnerability. I've had a rough 30 days. And Cameron, if there's anything that any of us can do for you specifically, or just as a sounding board, let us know, man. Drop us DMs, comment on here, start the conversations. But I love that he's candid. Hey, man, I've had a rough 30 days, but I had some time disconnected, and now it's time to get back at it, right?
Cameron, I will say this, man. I am ready for a Christmas little break. Not to get into my woes or our woes. November sucked. It sucked from an emotional, stressful, dramatic way.
Yeah.
But at the same time, going back to pivoting a little bit back to the social media thing, social media, you only put out there what you want people to see. My brand, my thing is all happy-go-lucky. I'm not going to be like, man, Grant Kemp is a butthead. That's just not who I am, so I'm not going to do it.
Yeah.
But I totally agree. You got to disconnect. You got to have a break. You got to have a minute to get clarity in the head.
And also, like Ronnie Phillip just chimed in, hiring a counselor has been the best investment I've ever made. When your mind is clear, you can do more and be more. And I want to completely second that. Counseling is a phenomenal route to go. And there's an app, and I can't remember the name of the app, but I'll use it. I have a family member that's dealt with.
I've heard therapy. Like, I've never done it just because I don't know. I don't know. I don't know why I've never done it, but it's like, because I'm awesome. I'm hard as a rock. Not hard as a rock. No, that sounded bad. I am a rock. No, but I've always heard therapy. There's always been kind of a stigma about therapy, and there shouldn't be.
Right.
It's just like having somebody to talk to.
Right. I've seen it work so many wonders in so many people in my life, and ultimately we have to do that. So let's chat about getting out of the depression. Okay. One of the things that, to this Facebook note, to the social media note, understand that, we see the Facebook posts of, hey, I've got, I'm going on this appointment, and hey, I'm, whatever, look at all this marketing I'm spending, all the time. But you don't commonly see the post of, hey, this is me at the closing table, and here's my P&L showing I actually made money. The point being, don't get so tempted to believe that just because somebody is putting out on Facebook that it was a good deal, right? That marketing, as you start to study marketing more and more, you'll become more and more disenchanted with what's happening in front of you on these social media sites, because you're like able to kind of read behind the lines a little bit sometimes.
Well, here's a nugget, because you're talking, and it just popped in my head because I'm an idiot, but you were talking about that marketing that they're showing. Guess what? Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Snapchat, Tumblr, whatever, that is also marketing. Like the days of old where social media was clearly about my cat, there's some people that still do that, but like people that are in this world, every post is a marketing post. So if you can scroll through your feeds and just go, look, these are all marketing efforts, maybe a little bit, I don't want you to be jaded and a little bit more pessimistic, but if you see hey, look at me doing this, well, that's a marketing post. Right.
And even if they are successful in that, even if it is a true success, be happy for them, man. That's one of the things that I have to remind myself when I see these posts, is because I'm very cynical when it comes to all that stuff. Just to be, again, vulnerable and frank, I freaking hate the Facebook motivational talkers. I'll go through my Facebook feed, and like 99% of it is like, man, you just gotta get up in the morning and go, like, yeah, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, I don't need some guy that's bought 5 houses telling me that I'm not working hard enough or being rah-rah enough to be successful, and that gets to me. But then I've got to remember, A, it's a marketing piece, B, even if it is a post where it's like, hey, look at all these houses I've bought, and I'm like, dude, I bought nowhere near that last month, and I feel like a piece of crap. What you don't know about that is that deal might not be good, and B, even if it is good for them. Good for them that they found a way to buy those houses and make that money, and that shows you that it is possible, right? And you can only compare yourself to you. One of the biggest things that does come out of therapy, does come out of counseling, is that the only thing you can change is you. The only thing that you have any control over at all is you. You have no control over the other person in your fight. You have no control over the person on the other side of the camera. You have no control over any of that. What you have a control over is how you respond to that.
Here's a lesson, and this isn't, I'm just giving so many nuggets to you, Travion. It's a lesson that it's not mine. I got it from Daniel Moore. It's 2 words: thank you. So if something like that, it's like, thank you. Instead of being pessimistic, instead of being reacting to somebody's negativity with your own negative, thank them. Thank you. Thank you for showing me who you are. Thank you for pointing out the flaws in me. Thank you for whatever. And instead of reacting as they come at you at 100, and instead of you going at 100, just thank you. Thank you for that. Whatever that is, and you can take those 2 words and apply it in so many different directions. Right. But like if an ex-girlfriend, ex-spouse does something chaotic, instead of reacting like, oh my God, this person's crazy, be like, thank you for pointing that out to me. Yeah. Thank you for telling me I need to run for the hills or I'm going to die.
And that takes a huge maturity a lot of times. But again, it goes back down to a simple, and this is a lesson that my dad has taught through our life, is that you got to choose. You got to choose. Every single thing, you either choose, I'm going to deal with this or I'm not going to deal with this. Okay? If you're going to deal with this, how are you going to deal with that, right? You can always break it down into its simplest form. And you've got to choose to say, I'm not going to let things trigger me. I'm going to thank them for the opportunity to have learned something else, or just kind of step away from the situation. All I can control is me. What I would like to know, like Ronnie said, and thank you, Ronnie, also for being willing, just even if this doesn't point out the stigma of mental health, I don't know what does. It's almost surprising to see somebody publicly say, hey, I got a counselor, I got therapy, and I think this is great, right? Even to the point of admitting that publicly, that's a great step, Ronnie. And I appreciate that you did that, because other people may read that who would have liked to do it, but were too enamored by the outlook of what a man should be, too enamored of the outlook of what an entrepreneur should be, whatever that might be. And I say man, not to be sexist, but because men have this, like, the American culture
Stoic.
is like, we don't have emotions, we just do, we succeed, and we're going to push. And that's not always true.
And to be clear, for me personally, the only reason I haven't gone to a therapy session yet is because I'm always working. And I don't mean that in a joking way, but literally that's, it's like, oh crap, shit, I'm working until 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock.
Right.
When am I? And I always feel bad if I'm not working.
And
like, even if it's a day off, like I went to Hawaii a couple years ago and I was checking my email every day, which is not what you need to be doing in Hawaii.
Yeah, no, totally. And to that point, we've got to understand, going back to our choice. No, I mean, that's true. Going back to our choice topic, our lives tend to take a cyclical approach, right? We tend to go into cycles and go through these moments of good and bad and good and bad. And we, again, have to choose if we are going to get different results than that cycle we have always gone through. It is up to us to break something in that cycle. And if this was becoming a issue enough for Ryan, the mental health aspect, that cycle you would have to break is making time for that counseling, right? That would be part of it.
I do want to address this comment from Sharon. Sometimes medication is necessary. Absolutely.
Yes.
If we're talking about clinical depression, absolutely
Please
go
see a
a
therapist
professional, go see a doctor, and because that's a clinical depression is a chemical imbalance. Most of the stuff we're talking about is not that. Most stuff we're talking about is, feeling down because the entrepreneur way is always about hustle, grind, and moving forward.
Right. It's it's something for us to subsidize the medication. If you are going through clinical depression, this stuff can help too. But please get diagnosed. That's very, very true. The next thing that I want to talk about is, again, it's going to be vulnerable. There's a very thin line that I have to walk with this, and I have to address. John is absolutely right. The only thing you can change is you, Grant Kemp, non-motivational speaker. I hope that I'm not being ironic here, right?
Moto Grant.
I'm going against I hate the Facebook motivational speakers.
Hashtag Moto Grant.
What I'm trying to do here, honestly, I'm trying to be just vulnerable and talk about actualities of it, right? And not be so much a like raw work. But, if you do get motivation from that, good. And if I'm being an ironic jerk, then
I think it's a good conversation, especially between the two of us, mainly because, like, I hopefully am never, like, visually angry or visually sad or visually like, woe is me. I hope my brand screams positivity, goofiness.
Right.
How the hell is this person doing work when he's always just bouncing the walls being an idiot? Like, that's basically who I am, my core. That being said, I do feel lonely. I do feel sad. I do feel like a failure, blah, 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 blah. And the same thing with you. I think most people that would look at you would be like, man, Grant's got his stuff together. He's always happy. He's got a loving family. He's got a loving wife, gorgeous little baby, all these little things. But yet there are those situations where you feel bad. So if people like you or people like me who are at least on the outside, always happy, have their moments of self-doubt.
Right.
It's okay for everybody else to do it too.
Well,
let me just real quick, is because the Debbie Downer person, if the Debbie Downer who is always negative and is always sad, and them talking about being sad or always down, it comes off, and again, I'm not trying to be disparaging, but it comes off as like, well, no shit, you're always like that.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And again, it goes back to our choice of we need to focus. If you are going through that depression, and again, clinical depression, please get diagnosed. Ronnie brings up, seek a counselor first. Doctors like to pill push in America. That's true. But get that addressed from a medical standpoint. But from a mental standpoint, we have to. Sorry, I caveated that away. What was your last point? I completely lost my train of thought, caveating myself.
Hey, my name is Ryan.
Shut up.
Just talking about like how when somebody's super positive, that doesn't mean that they don't have feelings of self-doubt.
Right.
And then also my other point was the person that's always woe is me.
Right.
It's like, well,
Exactly. It's what's expected, right? So there's that downward spiral where you kind of have to break that cycle and look to the positive. One thing that we can control is what aspect of the story we're going to pay attention to, okay? We do have control to speak that at least into existence, right? We need to continue our speech when we are feeling these issues of depression to not get caught up in, there's a fine line of, look, we're going to be real with people. We're going to open up to people and let them know how we're feeling, but we're also going to choose to try to focus on the positive. So here's one tool for you. Here's a tool that comes from therapy and counseling that legitimately does help, even though it is cheesy and it seems weird. If you're going through depression, if you're feeling a time of this kind of depression, at the end of the day, before you go to bed, I literally want you, even if you just keep like a Google Keep note on your computer or whatever that is, or on your phone, write down 5 good things that happened in the day. And I don't care how minor they are. It could be that you saw a really hot girl walk across from you when you were at Starbucks. I don't care. But take these steps to retrain your brain into looking for positives rather than dwelling on negatives. Because as you dwell, you become Eeyore, right? And it kind of spirals out. Eeyore from Winnie the Pooh.
Okay.
Is that too old of a reference?
I don't know.
You don't know who Eeyore is?
I thought it was is it Igor or Eeyore?
I thought it was Eeyore. Anyway, you become, you can lead yourself into a hole by cycling that through.
And then I'll jump on that too is I would challenge everybody at least once a day, reach out to somebody and say, hey, I appreciate you. And again, this sounds very rah-rah, but it's true. Here in the studio, like Travy and I, we work together side by side all the time. So at times there might be a mutual appreciation, but if you don't audibly say it every once in a while, it gets lost. And when you do have a stressful time, so if you love somebody, say, look, hey man, I love you. Hey, I appreciate you. So yes, sir, I do. I do, sir. But but for me, I'm not a vocal person.
Right.
So I have to train myself to, hey, I need to do that every once in a while, even though it's there in my heart. And if you could peel back the layers, be like, oh, Ryan loves everybody. But I'm not good at audibly saying that.
And sometimes
so I have to train myself.
Sometimes when you're in that depressed mood, you could think of nothing worse, nothing that would piss you off more than to have to think about good things. I know, because I've been there. You know what I mean? Like, nothing makes you more pissy than like somebody being like, tell me something good. You're like, no, nothing's good. Well, and so, but we got to push ourselves out of that. And we got to recognize that is, the reason I bring that up is that part of emotional intelligence, part of pushing towards a better goal is recognizing when these situations are occurring.
And another thing is we were talking about earlier about comparing success to success. You should also not compare your faults or your troubles with other people's troubles. Because let's take a scenario here. Grant feels bad for himself. Grant feels woe is me. Grant's this. I'm like, excuse me, Shannon's gorgeous. You have a loving wife. You have a loving family. You have a successful career. You have all this stuff going for you. What the hell do you have to be woe about? And again, that's the same. That's just as damaging as, man, you're so successful. You're so this. Why can't I have that? Don't stop comparing yourself to other people.
And I'm not going to make any assumptions here, but I know that whenever I made an announcement on my personal page, even Will Crozier was like, man, this is a great topic. I'm so glad you're addressing that. So from that, I might assume that this is something that even he has struggled with. Oh, man of multi success millionaire guy.
Yeah.
Everybody's there. It doesn't matter where you're at. You're going to deal with these things. So for me, again, to peel back a layer, and this is where I was leading into a second ago, saying this is a very tricky line for me to draw. I have a challenge in going into this aspect of my life, but the reality of it is it's just this is my reality, and so that's what I'm going to discuss. And I want to clarify again that my reality, my viewpoints are not Propelio's, it's not Ryan's, it's nothing like that. And I also want to clarify that part of why I'm doing all of this clarification is I get nervous about going down this road because I don't want this to be. There's so many people out there that profess their faith as a marketing tool. I hate that with a passion. But again, this is all a discussion of realities that we're dealing with and being completely open about stuff. So me, personally, part of the cycle that I find of when I am most depressed, when I am most not feeling it, is I find I've strayed away from my faith in one way or another. And so, it's one of those things that we have to understand when we get depressed. If you are of a faith, myself, I'm Christian, so I'm going to reference the Bible stuff. But if you are of a faith, sometimes that depression can be heightened by what a failure. Not only are you being in your failure, are you being in your life, but then you've also strayed further and further away from God, and that can even lead into the depression even further. So I just want to point out, like the Book of Judges, which a lot of people have not necessarily studied, but if you have, good. But that entire book is a cycle, and what that cycle is people are good with God, everything's great. People lose their faith, everything's awful. God raises up a judge to bring them back to him, and they come back and he forgives them and everything's great. And it's like that for 100 years or so. And then they lose their faith, and it's just this cycle over and over and over and over again. The moral of the story here is that we have to understand, and again, these are my viewpoints, this is great, but we have to understand that if you are a Christian, and I'm not sure with the other faiths, when you're straying away and when you're having those moments of failure and those moments of I'm just out on this, realizing that that moral of the story is that you're always forgiven. You always have a way to get back. That it is not a worldly, the God's view of you is not worldly. It is not something that, like, we're used to holding grudges and not wanting to forgive our ex-girlfriend or whatever that might be. That's not how your relationship with the Lord is. And so if you are of a Christian faith, I have been able to work out of many depressions by just realizing that part of my depression is that I've strayed away from my faith. Part of my depression is that I'm no longer trusting the Lord with my future, trying to bring it all into my own hands, and I've put kind of this cloud between us. So trying to work back to that place is when I'm typically able to get out and able to start getting back into a rhythm of doing the things that I need to do as a normal contributor to society. So again, that is one approach that I have. It's not going to be an approach that I think Ryan has. It's not going to be an approach that a lot of you have. But I do broach the subject because if that's you, if you are in that area, again, feel free, DM me, tag me in here. I'm always happy to have conversations.
Yeah, and I think the other way to look at that from the non-believer side is realizing that the race is not over until you're actually dead. So like this race of entrepreneurship, to tie it back to that, is, you have success, you have failure, you have success, you have failure, 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 you have success, whatever. At the end of the day, if you're not judging yourself to other people and all you're doing is keeping with that grind, there's always that next step. There's always that next house. There's always that next purchase. There's always that next career, whatever. And, going to the circle aspect of it, in my mind, it's not so much a circle, it's a linear, let's go. And even though that path goes this and that and then all over the place, as long as that target is success, whatever success is to you, then you're on the right path. That being said, this is a good Sean Whalen moment, is define success for you. What is your why? Why do you want to do something?
Right.
If you're not familiar with Sean, he's a moto guy, but he also is a life coach. But I had a very candid conversation, and we'll probably get him a guest in the future, which was, people pay me a lot of money to find out what they want in life. I'm like, what does that mean? I had one woman pay me thousands upon thousands of dollars to tell her that she should go buy a horse. And it literally is like, what do you mean? He's like, well, and he did this to me, and it was very frustrating because it's like, what do you want? And he's like, well, I want this. Why? I don't know what I want. He's like, exactly. You got to find out what you want.
Yeah.
But going back to the horse thing, is this lady had run all these $1 million businesses. She's had all the success, but she wasn't happy. And then he drilled down into her, and what would make her happy was riding a horse. He's like, then here's permission. Go buy a horse and go ride your horse. I don't know where I was going, but
No,
there it
good.
is.
No, it's good. I think this is all great. I would love to know if you guys would drop in the comments. We've gotten a couple of book recommendations. I'll bring those up after the break. We're going to take one last break. We've gotten a couple of book recommendations. We've also got, if you've ever gone through therapy, or you've ever gone through counseling, or you've ever gone through depression, and you have a golden nugget to drop for us, something that helped you, whatever that golden nugget is, please drop it now in the content, or in the comments. I would love to see that. When when we get back from the break, we'll kind of summarize that. We'll summarize a little bit of what we're talking about. I'll give you some reading assignments of things that have been good for me. We'll talk a little bit about some other futuristic outlooks, and hopefully send everybody on a good day. So drop your comments and we will see them whenever we get back. All right, welcome back to today's very serious episode of Grant Teach Me Something as we talk about depression as an entrepreneur. Ryan brought up something that I think is very valuable for us to really define, and it goes back to the whole speech of proper expectations. And I want to talk about defining your why, because that's very important to this business, not only in what you're putting out publicly, whether that's your mailer campaign or whatever, or your Facebook page, but also to what's happening internally. As I'm saying this, I want you guys to be dropping in the comments any kind of golden nugget that you may be able to share with us that's helped you through depression, or any kind of reading recommendation that you might have, and we'll go over that. But here's what I want to say. When you start this entrepreneurial journey, when you start down the road of you are going to take this upon yourself to become an entrepreneur and lead this company, maybe lead your family, whatever that might be, talk with your husband. Talk with your wife, talk with your boyfriend, talk with your girlfriend. There must be a very clear expectation of what it is that you are signing up for. If you have any questions about that, 3 or 4 episodes back, I did an interview with one of my students, Chase Howard. I would recommend you go watch that because we talk kind of in depth about those expectations, what it's like having a marriage or a relationship while trying to create a company at the same time. And I want to be very clear on something, that I've got a lot of people that depend on me at this point in time, and that's one of the things that weighs down on me very heavily, that makes me get into depression sometimes, is I feel like, gosh, I've got 20, 30 mouths that all depend on what I am doing to feed them, and that can really weigh down. But I would quit it in a heartbeat if my wife were to ever say, Grant, I need you back. I can't deal with this time anymore. I can't deal with the time that you're putting into it. I would go get a W-2 job. Just like that, okay? Because my understanding of getting into this at the beginning was that she was my priority. And one of the biggest lessons that I learned, I talk about the time I spent in depression last year, 2017, first 2 quarters, I was completely depressed. The big revelation that I had at that point in time was that I must remember my priorities. And my priorities, in order to be sane, are God, family, everything else. Everything else will get ordered somehow. But if my family is unhappy with something that's happening, or my son is not getting me as much as he needs, I'm done. I'll throw it up, and I'm sorry. And so you need to decide that as well. And I'd love to see your comments too. What are your priorities? We've had that discussion before where it's like, I'm God, family, everything else. And Ryan has a work first, right? And he's been very clear with that, with any of the emotional or the relationships that he's had.
Even when I was in a relationship, it didn't do very well for that relationship when they realized that they were, they're still a priority, but it
was a first date conversation for you, right? Basically.
It really was, yeah. And again, a lot of that stems from the fact that, I am not married. I am not married. That's not really great. Is that good grammar? It doesn't matter. I'm not married. I don't have any kids. I do have a dog. I do have some really good friends. But for me, it's because I've been on the entrepreneur roller coaster of having a lot of success, of having a lot of failure. I feel like I'm playing catch up. So right now I'm 37, be 38 next week. What's today?
That's awesome. Today is the 12th.
Yeah, I'll be old. Anyway, so I feel like I have to play catch up because in 2016, my life got turned upside down and I became a complete failure. Luckily, my relationship with Grant, my relationship with Daniel has helped me turn around, and I'm on my climb back up to awesomeness. But at the same time, my priority is that success train, and that's why work first is always there for me. That being said, priority 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, I have no idea. But that's because my entire life is Propelio at this moment in time. Is that healthy? No, it's not. But, we're being vulnerable, we're being open, but that's who I am. If somebody walks into my life and completely knocks me over the head, guess what? That person will probably move to number 1 spot very quickly. That being said, it just hadn't happened yet.
So to move into the, thank you for sharing. To move into the,
yeah, I love you, Trey.
To move into some of the golden nuggets, some of the comments that we've had. Edward Chambers, apathy has led to no motivation. Status quo is good enough, but that can't last forever, right? And I totally feel that. My depression that I was going through last year was like, look, I'm making enough money, right? Like, we've got cash flow, whatever. I'm just done. I just could not. I didn't go to the office for 6 months. My employees like barely knew me for that time. So I totally get that.
I know.
What's that?
What?
Yeah, Ronnie Phillips says The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. Untethered Soul by Michael Singer. Those are great books to read. Daniel Geffen's book from Matt Smith. Here's a golden nugget from Ronnie. Study cognitive behavioral therapy and meditate every day. Sarah, I love seeing God Family work everything else. Chris being vulnerable, Chris Chavez talking about some of the things that he's seen and talking about too. He was on medications. Again, if you need medication, do not be ashamed of that. One of the hard parts of taking a depression medication is once you start feeling better from that medication, you're going to start getting really frustrated with yourself of why do I have to depend on this medication to be a normal human being, and you'll want to stop. Don't.
Yeah.
Don't stop. Stick on it. The reason why you feel that way is because the medication is helping, and that is okay. Do not feel stigmatized about needing some medication to get going. I will tell you one of the things that really helped me as far as books go, and I'm a huge preacher of this, and maybe now you'll understand a little bit more of why I'm such a huge preacher of this. Traction. The book Traction really pulled me out of a lot of depression because so much of my depression hovered around the failures that I was having in business, and reading that book and seeing a light at the end of the tunnel that there were, this is why I suck at what I suck at, really helped me. And it has helped me to live in a 90-day world and to understand that our expectations of ourselves have to be reasonable, and we can only do realistically 3 or 4 big things a quarter or 3 or 4 big things a year, and everything outside of that is noise, and we need to order that for ourselves and kind of go through that.
And on that, it is okay to suck at things.
It is.
If you could be really good at things, at certain things over here, it's okay to suck at this over here. Find a good JV partner. Just find a good partner. Find a good employee. Find a good boss. Whatever.
Right. Right. Yeah. You don't need to compare your
again. It goes back to comparing. Don't compare your failures or successes with other people.
Right. Absolutely.
Stick to your lane.
So, guys, check out some reading. Again, you've got a whole community of people that have been watching this video, commenting on this video. If you are willing, I would love you, please, if you are willing to accept somebody's DM because they're feeling it right now, and they just kind of need somebody to talk to.
That sounds so dirty. I'm sorry. I know you're trying to be serious, but that sounded so dirty.
If you are willing to accept a DM for somebody that's feeling down, please comment right now. Say, DM me, please. Right? So that anybody watching in the future, if you are going through this, and I'm gonna put it right now, DM me, please. If you're feeling it and you're not feeling it, and you just need to vent for a second, or you need somebody to kind of slap you upside the head, look through the comments.
I will say that find a venting partner. Like, luckily, Grant and I, we have a strong enough relationship where, I can vent about certain things and realize it's not going anywhere other than him. And he knows that it's not his job to respond, it's just his job to listen, and vice versa.
Right.
Did you want to talk about escapism at all? Or
yeah, let's cover that.
Escape?
Yeah, let's cover that real quick, and as we summarize here. I just don't know. I can't see the time on my iPad. So that's a good way to wrap up.
Yeah, for me, and again, I'm not saying this is right, wrong, healthy, unhealthy, but this is my current way. My escape is I work. My escape is I love movies and Netflix, and if I can find a cool computer game, I'll jump in there. My escape used to be, when I was more healthy, used to be reading a ton. I used to read a shit ton. Problem is my mental health. Because it's so stressed, I like stupid movies that are just the stupidest, like Marvel, just junk food for my brain type of content. That, and I also like playing blackjack. That's probably not the very healthiest way. I've honestly stopped playing a little bit just because I got to the point where I was like, okay, this is stupid. You spend so much money on blackjack tables just to escape. That's an unhealthy choice. If you want to go there because you generally want to play, great. But if you're going there just to escape, that is an unhealthy choice. So I've been able to like not do that for like a couple weeks, more like a couple months. But I'm just saying, it's like my escape used to be to go up to Choctaw, play blackjack.
Yeah.
But you know, it really hit home back in early November. Daniel and I were in New Orleans, and you know, I love blackjack. So he was like, "Well, show me how to play." So we're at Harris, and I lost like $1,500 in like 22 minutes. Playing like just regular, I wasn't playing like a lot of money.
Yeah.
It was like $25. And it was just like, Daniel's like, you like this game? I felt so stupid that I'm like, yeah, I haven't played since.
Yeah.
So.
All right. Well, I really appreciate the vulnerability, bringing that up. For you guys, y'all know that my escapism is going to the deer lease or going home and spending time with my wife and giving myself permission to shut off. And so I'll wrap up with the same thing that I started with, which is nothing is more important to your success and the company's success than you being in a position where you're taking care of yourself so you can give your company the fullest. Do not put your own mental health to the sidelines so that you can do something for the company.
I would expand it to mental and physical health.
Mental and physical health, exactly. So please take care of yourself. Today we usually wrap up with short little pitches. Today's not really an appropriate time to do that, but as a quick, Propelio, support the brand. They're doing a great job. Check out Propelio.com for your leads list, your websites, your CRM, all kinds of amazing stuff that you can get through Propelio. CreativeCashflow.com. I can teach you how to buy more houses, but that is.
I'm sorry, I know you're in the middle of it, but it's like, today's not a good day to pitch, but
I'm making it like a 15-second, like we still, we got to put it out there. But thank you guys for joining. Thank you guys for being real. Thank you guys for putting in here. Those of you who are willing to get DMs, I love it. Thanks for building the community, and we will see you guys next Wednesday at 11 for the next episode of Grant, Teach Me Something.